you'll see right here in the benchmarks basically that Mythos 5 and Fable 5, and we already knew this honestly because Mythos preview when it came out right here, it was the model like to beat basically. But now they brought in some other things like agentic coding because that has become pretty much like the main usage for LLMs now in agent harnesses. And so agentic coding itself is like something that we are really looking to build up now. And as you can see, we're just in the beginning stages right here. Um, so we do want like right here, it's 80% on agentic coding, but this right here is the diamond is basically like to the extent that it could be used, pretty much. So like from what we know as of now, this is like what we've seen so far on average, like this is where it can get. And once again, these benchmarks right here are pretty much useless for 99% of the people. But with that being said, I mean, agentic coding, all I'm trying to say is that's something that a lot of people are looking at, and it wasn't in Mythos preview that much. So like now they're starting to bring it in. Obviously, you can see right here it's 77.8%. So yeah, I mean, like it's pretty much like outstanding in most areas right here. It's gonna beat it pretty much, except for computer use right here, and it's like a small margin. And multidisciplinary reasoning, small margin once again. But in every other case, it's basically beating every other model by a little bit. Its own model obviously, or by quite a bit. If you were looking back at Gemini 3.1 Pro right here, which right now we're at 3.5 Flash, and we're still waiting for 3.5 Pro to surface. Okay. So the big thing about Fable 5 and Mythos 5 is that it can work autonomously for long periods of time, which once again, I'm going to switch over to the PowerPoint presentation in a second, and we'll talk about that a little bit more so. But yeah, you can basically see right here like the different thinking reasoning efforts or thinking efforts, reasoning efforts that you can utilize it at. You can see right here pretty much, for example, Claude Opus, like Max actually did not really bring out much more in the model, right? So it's accuracy versus cost, so for the cost that you paid, you didn't really get that much more accuracy out of it. Like it actually like went back, pretty much. So extra I was like your best bet on Opus 4.8, but here you can basically see that EMOT Max, it still raises the bar. And so with all that being said right here, pretty much what's interesting again is like low from Claude Fable 5. It's pretty much on the level of Max with Opus 4.8. So that's another interesting one, right? So like you can definitely get more out of it. Like if this is accurate, then you can definitely get a whole lot more out of it in terms of this percentage score. We're up here at 30, and you could tell that Max is somewhere around the 10, 12 area, or extra high around the 15 area. So half of what you can get out of Claude Fable 5. Now it's once again depending on cost. So I mean the cost when it comes to this model right here is quite high, I feel like, which I don't want to. I think it's $10 and $50, but we'll see in the PowerPoint presentation exactly what it is. So again, they're putting agentic coding on the forefront because we're having all these agent harnesses being used now. And so it's definitely like a good point to make that it stands out over all the other models like Claude Opus and GPT 5.5 by quite a bit, I mean, I want to say by quite a bit. Okay. So yeah, it shows strong performance on complex analytical tasks. I got like some kind of car outside that's honking. Not sure if you can hear it, but yeah. So anyway, Fable 5 shows strong performance on complex analytical tasks, right? And then vision, Fable 5 is the new state-of-art model for tasks involving vision, which is pretty interesting to have a little example down here where Fable actually plays, like literally plays Pokemon Fire Red, which is like a little Pokemon game. And once again, I watched this video and we can watch it together if you really want to, but it's only a minute long, so I'm pretty sure you can find this on YouTube without a problem. It basically just like speed runs right through the, not like, so Anthropic's not speed running, at least I don't think so, but this is a time lapse of it. So you can basically see it play the game all the way through and beat it. So that's one example. Memory and long context, Fable 5 stays focused across millions of tokens. So you do have that 1 million token context window. So with that being said, man, that car is really annoying outside. But Claude Fable 5 simulates the solar system and predicts a solar eclipse. So this is like another example that they did. I've seen this like multiple times by multiple people that pretty much test these different LLM models, and so they will like create a solar system and predicts the solar eclipse. Okay, great. That not that crazy, not that hard to do. If you sit down and prompt everything right and kind of go through it. Um, Drug design, okay, yeah, we have models that are doing that. Opus and all of them were able to doing that as well. The reason why they're highlighting this is because biology is like one of its strong suits. So I think they want science. Dude, you got to be kidding me. I got to pause this video. This is crazy. All right. We're back. There must be some kind of soccer game going on. There was a horde of people walking through outside with a flag, waving it around, and so just blowing a horn. So yeah, interesting enough. Let's get back to where we were. So yeah, highlighted biology. So molecular biology is pretty much where they're getting into, and so like Anthropic is really trying to provide organizations now because I have like noticed that they've brought out quite a bit of medical focused um, connectors, they call them. And so they're trying to dive into those areas and get them involved. It's pretty interesting because, to me, I've dealt with the medical system, and you would tend to think that they already have all this kind of stuff in place or have had it, but I was pretty surprised that they had not had any exposure to it and that no one had actually approached them so far in person, like I'm not talking about email, but in person about AI solutions for medical businesses. And so I deal with medical businesses as well, chiropractors and plastic surgeons. And with that being said, I mean, it's just like it's a wide open market. So anyone that wants to compete with me, come on. But yeah, so I mean, new safeguards. So I mean, like the big difference is pretty much, like you can't like hack all the programs like Mythos, because Mythos could like exploit vulnerabilities that had been like in programs that had been in play for 16, 17 different, 16, 17 years. And with that being said, it's you're getting similar capabilities, but you're not getting the hacking abilities pretty much. Um, yeah, safety classifiers. Like I said, feel free to read this. I'm kind of like going over the images a little bit more so because everything that is written down right here, I have pretty much shortened down into PowerPoint presentation, and it's gonna be quick. So yeah, you see right here, Claude Opus 4.8, no safeguards, right? That's that green right there. So like no safeguards, and then 4.8 with the default safeguards. Um, okay, showing right here, even smaller. And then Claude Mythos Preview, which was like pretty much the one that didn't have any safeguards and that they stated was too dangerous to release, which is right here. And then Claude Mythos 5 now obviously like further developed even stronger, pretty much in offensive cyber evaluations. So like it's even stronger. It can like read into like those kind of things even more so. And Claude Fable, as you can see, is like down here at 0. So like that really like highlights that it's not made for any kind of cybersecurity related ability, or cyber security related, professional. Yeah, I don't even know what the word is honestly. Like, it's not meant for like that area. Okay. Um, so it's really like for consumers like us to use, for programming and whatnot. But red team classifiers, okay, cyber adversarial robustness eval. So once again, I mean, you're just always going to see that Claude Fable is like all the way down here because like all the other ones are more so meant or made for it. Kind of interesting to see that Claude Opus 4.8 is like lower, but I guess that's where where they're going with like consumer grade. It's more like into, honestly, I feel like, Anthropic being like the one that was like really stating, oh, we don't want governments to have too much power and blah, blah, blah. But now they actually come out with Mythos 5, which is really directed towards, more not more powerful organizations, but definitely more powerful organizations. It's not mean to say that, they are definitely more powerful. So it's kind of like they're separating, like they're basically creating two products now. I don't know why, but it's just interesting. And yeah, viral capsid experimental property prediction. I honestly don't know what this is. Let's move on. Availability. I mean, it is available now. So yeah, let me just jump over to the PowerPoint presentation. I tried to like create it like in the Mythos style, and so let's check it out. So enter the Mythos tier, Anthropic, Claude, Fable 5, and Mythos 5 architecture breakdown, so um, this was like the classes that I was basically describing earlier. Opus is no longer the ceiling. Mythos-class is now the number one. Built for days long asynchronous, highly autonomous cognitive work right here. So like it's pretty much able to do not just long running, but delegation and agentic coding like we talked about, and I mean it can do pretty much like it's doing everything that they've been working towards. So like this could potentially be like the not the last class, that they create, but like Mythos could be around for like quite a while, I think. Artificial analysis intelligence, 65 is the index right here, so it's pretty good, obviously. So it's the highest one. And then, you see right here the difference between, so one engine, right, two products, as I was talking about earlier. You got Claude Fable 5 for the public release, and then you got Project Glasswing, trusted partners only for enterprise use, I guess, or government use or whatever. But Claude Mythos 5 right here, you'll see right here, cyber biology and distillation classifiers are active, but the safeguards are only lifted, and full offensive cyber and viral design capabilities are only here. So yeah, once again, I don't know how I feel about this, honestly. I think people haven't thought about it yet. They're just like still wowed by the fact that Fable 5 is like really capable and does really cool things. But once again, I just feel like it's kind of like a little bit of a diversion between like what Anthropic said they stood for and what they were announcing to the public, and now what they're doing. Now they're basically creating something for enterprise use only, which has no safeguards. I don't know. It's very interesting. What can I say? I feel a certain way about it. But yeah, here you see the SWE-Bench Pro, which is like one of the main classifiers, pretty much for like how strong an LLM model is. And this is right here is, if you remember, the Frontier Code Diamond max effort. This is like at max effort agentic coding capabilities. And so, I mean, it's just highlighting that it's stronger than Opus by, more than double. And Claude Fable is at 80.3% on the SWE-Bench Pro, and Claude Opus 4.8 was at 69.2, GPT 58.6. So, I mean, that's really a huge increase. The Stripe feature, migrated a 50 million line Ruby code base in one single day. Estimated manual time would be 2+ months. So yeah, I mean, people are pretty surprised. I was watching someone who actually made a Minecraft game, and it was pretty close to like the original. And it took him 45 minutes, I believe, maybe 1 hour. But just think about, and he said this, just think about like how long it took to create Minecraft. Um, yeah, it's pretty amazing what we can do with the help of AI. But yeah, so old agentic workflows is going back to the agentic coding, but it used to be prompt, then there would be human research, which believe me, I know you'd have to sit down and do a lot of research. Human scoping, model implement, and then human debug, and then you would deploy. But with Fable, like, because what they're highlighting here is the loops that everybody's talking about right now, but that's going to be in this area right here where it basically just loops around until it achieves its goal, and then only then goes to adversarial self-testing right here. And then it goes to deployment pretty much to where you are presented with it. But yeah, it's like an input prompt. Like, so I input my prompt, right? Then it self scopes. So like it basically will look at the prompt itself and see if it can't make the prompt better and like break it down and all that to basically be prepared. And then native blast radius analysis. So I mean, this is like a loop, so it'll just keep looping through it and just like keep checking itself pretty much. I am still finishing up a video for Minimax M3, which it is supposed to be very good at is this loop, and it's an open weight model, so slightly different. Not going to have the same not going to have the same performance as Fable will, but who knows what we can get out of it. I created a CRM, which is pretty impressive. Not design wise per se, but like the functionality of it is like pretty impressive, and I'm pretty sure I could like make the design look good with one or two more prompts. But yeah, so adversarial self-testing and then deployment, right? So phase-gated prompting is obsolete. Fable natively spawns adversarial agents to challenge assumptions in untouched code before deploying. So you could look at it like there's going to be another agent that's specialized in one area, right? And another one that's specialized in a different area. So I built something like this as well, actually, with Hermes agent, where I have different profiles like debating against each other. And I love watching it. It's like watching a movie. It's like watching a debate, like real like political debate, which I don't watch. At times I do, but it's more like it's like a little debate, and it's really interesting because like you're the one who's creating these profiles, right? And so like you can have anyone really just battle it out, against each other in whatever way you want. The one thing that I'm facing right now is that it's more of a, like I call it a round table. So like it goes around the table. So like whatever the issue is that starts with the first person that addresses it, it is like handed around, and you tell it how many rounds. That's why it's called round table. How many rounds you want it to go around for, and each time someone can pretty much like the next agent that receives the input from all the agents before, so like all the inputs before, then can bring its own opinion to the table, to the round table, right? And then that is handed off, and so on and so on and so on. And they do actually conclude at times. Like at times they'll just like say, "Hey, this is not right. That's not right from this perspective. Legal, blah blah blah. It's not right. And so like they do accept that someone else has a better point, and then it distills into a pretty good outcome. I feel like almost every time. Yeah, I really enjoy that. So with that being said, let me move on. But that's pretty much what I think Fable is doing. As well. It just like has like this loop of different personalities, characters, specialties, pretty much criticizing the work of the very first presentation, and therefore it just goes through that loop until it decides, okay, like probably an orchestrator agent that decides, okay, this is good enough, or it is limited by time. Not exactly sure how they do it, but once again, pretty interesting stuff. Right here you see completed a full game using only raw screenshots, right? So zero maps, zero harnesses, zero internal game state data. Saw someone else do this as well, pretty much with Fable 5 versus ChatGPT 5.5 or GPT 5.5. And they basically just had the screenshots, no maps, no harnesses, yeah, nothing like that either. I mean, so it was screenshots and a prompt, really. And it basically created, Minecraft. GPT did it as well. Really good stuff. Fable was a little bit better, for sure. But long story short, here's a blueprint bench. So like blueprints are pretty hard to do, because like you have so many different details that have to be included and brought in to perspective, and so therefore, yeah, these can be like they look good. They generally look good, but it's pretty hard for these models to like create something that is accurate, detailed, and follows the structural pattern of a blueprint. And so, yeah, 40% is like really good on Fable, right? While Opus 4.8 could only produce about 15%. Now, be interesting to know what the other ones produce, because like Gemini, for example, I find is very good with infographics, and we have Banana Pro and Banana Pro 2 and all, like GPT-2 image right now and things like that. Like it'd be interesting to know like a model that's specifically made for image generation, like where it would stack up in these numbers right here, instead of having their own models compared to each other. But again, yeah, I mean, great improvement over double. And then Slay Aspire reached final act 3 times more often than Opus with persistent file-based memory, right? So 3 times more often than Opus. That's pretty good. So Slay Aspire is just a video game. I had actually um, had to like research this because I really wasn't sure what it was. But it's like a turn-based game, with cards. It's like a Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh type of game, pretty much, where it's turn-based, and then you like lay out the card, and then you have attack, defense, blah blah, all that. And so yeah, reached final act 3 times more often than Opus. So with persistent file-based memory. So they gave it a file-based memory, so MD files most likely, I would think, but it could also be, a It could also be like an SQL, or like a super base type of thing, where it just is able to go back to the conversation or the thinking that it had prior. So therefore, it wouldn't like repeat or get caught in endless loops of doing the same thing over and over again. So yeah, that's persistent file-based memory. Yeah, so here you basically see on the left side your user prompt, right? And then it goes to the Fable 5 classifiers. And I guess, so like really what this comes down to, I just like really want you to look at the plumbing, because as it's like really going around, it's like it's these these loops, right? So but yeah, just take that into consideration. But so Mythos 5 is 88 and Fable 5 is 84.3%. Score drop purely due to 20.9% safety refusal rate on benign commands. Okay, so but yeah, Fable 5 classifiers right here, cyber bio distillation, pretty much comes in here, it's flagged, and then it goes to Claude Opus 4.8. Don't really know what that means, to be honest. But I think like the point that they're trying to make here in general is that it just like continuously goes through a loop. That's kind of like why I drew this, pretty much to like represent these loops basically, to where it's like always being like once it hits a certain spot where it's like being evaluated, then it basically like goes back here. It's clear. Okay, great. Fable 5, it can be used for that, but once it's flagged, it can't. And so like I guess the reason why I put this here, I don't really remember, but I think the reason why I put this here is because Claude Opus 4.8 you would have a better chance of getting something that would be classified in Fable 5 as flagged. You'd have a better chance of getting it through with Claude Opus 4.8 because it was a higher, if you remember the graph that we looked at on their webpage. Claude Opus 4.8 was better at letting these type of cybersecurity things go through. Okay. But if here, you see 95% of standard sessions should be clear. That's just like an overall number, I mean, based on, I don't know what kind of research, but 5% in general would not be a standard session, right? So that's interesting. So yeah, adaptive thinking is always on. That was kind of interesting, I thought, when I heard it the first time. Raw thoughts are hidden, summarized by default. Yeah, this is just like extra information. But the adaptive thinking basically means that it will switch to whatever thinking, whatever effort is needed, for the task at hand. So I feel like this is interesting. I always on. I'm not sure if I like that, but I guess for like the general public, because this is a model that's really released for the general public, that is a good idea. But again, for me personally, I am not sure if like that should always be on. But yeah, I understand, especially for token usage, this can make a lot of sense. The pricing receipt right here, Fable 5 is $10 in, $50 out. Okay, so double the price of Opus 4.8, $5 in, $25 out, and GPT 5.5, $5 in, $30 out. So we know that Fable 5 is better than GPT 5.5 as things seem right now. So therefore, I guess it makes sense that it would be more expensive, right? We know that Fable 5 is better than Opus 4.8. Makes sense that it would be more expensive. But double, man, dude, really? I mean, I don't know about like token usage and all those things right there. I mean, even with this adaptive thinking on, I can only see this like just mowing through your tokens or mowing through like your balance, whatever you have, especially if you're running it on the API. So the only way I see this making sense to be used at all is unless like you're making tons of money and you can afford an API that is called on, per request, because the API is like really expensive. Or you basically have a token plan and then you deal with the rate limiting, which means that you can only go so far, and then you need 5 hours for reset purposes, and then so far because like you get weekly limits, and then you need whatever rest of the time you have left over. So like yeah, you kind of being limited in every single way possible, and then with a price increase like this, I don't know. I The difference to GPT 5.5 for me personally is not that drastic. Now, there may be use cases for you personally, but I would still prefer this or this personally, okay? So, Fable 5 is great. It's better for sure. But that difference right here is not really what I'm looking to use. And so that's why I really wanted to pinpoint this a little bit. Flagged requests routed to Opus 4.8 are billed at the lower Opus rates. Yeah, okay, cool. So like even when they're flagged, they still like go through the Opus 4.8. That's why I had it on the slide before. And then they're actually billed at a lower Opus rate. That's pretty cool. That is pretty cool. But generally speaking, obviously with us moving towards Fable 5, at some point Opus 4.8 might not be available anymore. Who knows? So at this point, flagged requests still are routed to Opus 4.8, but who knows what the future holds, right? Um, yeah, here you'll just like see one more time, pretty much like the most outstanding um, comparisons, pretty much, and uh, it's pretty obvious what's going on here. Humanity's Last Exam, which is like a really, really hard one. Extreme context, unverified it says, but I'm pretty sure that's 1 million at this point. 74% MRCCR. Yeah, okay, so I mean 512K and more, but like at this point, I think that's verified as 1 million. And here as well, I mean, like they're saying 512K plus. They're 1 million. I think in the end, they're all going to be like the same, 1 million, and then they're just like gradually, like we're still waiting for like the big 5 million context window because I think that's where like real coding can happen. Um, yeah, and by the time we get to like that context window size, we will be pretty much at a level where there are agents breaking down tasks and like individually working on them, and yeah, matrix style, honestly. Safety fallback silent to Opus, that's pretty cool, right? Then the GPT, there's no safety fallback for GPT 5.5 and no fallback for Claude Opus 4.8. So that's pretty cool. The fallback mechanisms have been like in the agentic harnesses, like Hermes, OpenClaw, and yeah, I think PyAgent actually has it as well. There's a like once again these agentic harnesses, they pretty much have like these fallback systems in them because they're making multiple models available as well. And I thought that was pretty cool about like for example Hermes agent with the profiles at the round table I was telling you about. Like I can basically put different models to each profile and then they battle it out at the table as well. So like another interesting feature. Data retention, 30-day mandatory. Okay. Zero data, zero data. Okay. So like there's a 30-day mandatory data retention with Claude Fable 5, which, it's not a bad idea, I think, for Claude Anthropic themselves, because the data retention itself means that they can train their models on it, right? And you have access to it as well. I think, data retention is still like something that goes on, even though it says zero data right here, because I do know that I can download all my conversations and things like that from ChatGPT, for example. And so I would be surprised if you couldn't do that with OpenAI GPT models. So yeah, but yeah, pretty interesting stuff, right? And ALE anomaly, agent's last exam benchmark, right? 24% versus Fable 22%. Um, Fable 5 dominates raw cognitive depth, but GPT 5.5 wins on extreme long horizon stability and strict adherence to multi-part complex formatting instructions without dropping constraints. So, I mean, as you can see, in some ways, 5.5, GPT 5.5 is still winning over Fable 5, right? As you can see right here, the blue is supposed to showcase GPT 5.5. So its strength lies in long context stability, multi-part instruction adherence, but reasoning depth and code refactoring would go to Fable 5, for example, if you wanted to compare them directly. But in the middle, they still have, capabilities like these uh, for each direction as well. But if you wanted to look at this and be like really exact, you could say, oh well, the shape of Fable 5 is like slightly larger, and it's because of the multi-part instruction adherence right here. It's like almost getting to the same spot. Yep, it is, but it's not. So with that being said, you know, it is still in certain situations, GPT 5.5 will still outperform Fable 5. So that's just good to know. And then the covered model caveat, right? Fable 5 is a covered model. Mandatory 30-day data retention for safety classifier monitoring. Zero data retention is strictly unavailable. If your compliance requires ZDR, you are locked to Opus 4.8 or GPT 5.5. So just something to note and take with you. And then writes targeted surgical diffs. It skips the parts I obviously know and flags what actually worries me. Feels like a mature, calm, down to earth senior programmer. No more AI vibe code. It will absolutely annihilate your API limits. Kind of like what I said. Rate limit loops are a real danger on intense tasks. So like these are just opinions of people that I had found in my research, and so I just like dropped them in here. So like a little bit of pros and cons, right? User needs and model selection. So yeah, this is pretty cool. I feel like because if you need fast daily production and assistant tasks, Claude Sonnet's still like your best bet. And honestly, I think for 95% of what Claude Opus can do, so like this can do 95% of what Claude Opus can do. Um, for that, and then the price difference and whatever not, and speed and blah, all that stuff, I am still like a big user of Claude Sonnet more so than anything else. But a lot of people preferred Claude Opus. I don't know why. Maybe just because it's the best. 95%. Like I don't cover the other 5%, and maybe that's like where these other people like really prefer Claude Opus because they do. But I don't know what those use cases are. If you know what use cases they are, please leave a comment and tell me what those other 5% in use cases would be. But yeah, if you need high reasoning but have strict CDR compliance and budget restraints, then use Claude Opus 4.8 because like once again we said Claude Fable 5 is like really high up there, right? Double the price. GPT 5.5 could be a better bet for you as well, but Opus still has a high reasoning, right? Need to operate in cyber bio, require 500K plus stable context, or need CDR. Well, you remember that this right here was also good for like long horizon tasks, so just keep that in mind in that aspect, because if Claude Fable was like weaker than GPT 5.5, then most likely Claude Opus would also be weaker than GPT 5.5. So for long horizon tasks, that require the context window to stay alert and aware, GPT 5.5 might be your better bet. And then need repository level migration, surgical diffs, and absolute autonomy, Claude Fable 5. I think that's really the big selling point is that there's like a certain amount of autonomy built into it that the other models don't have. And with that loop being, honestly, all these other models are going to have that. These loops and whatnot are going to be built into like even existing models because if it does make if it makes them better, why wouldn't they be using them in general? So with that being said, Claude Fable 5, yeah, I don't know. I mean, we'll see what use cases we can use them for. But yeah, for tests, you're going to have to reach out to me and let me know that you want me to test it in person. If not, there are some pretty good short videos out there too. They're not even that long on YouTube. Capability is no longer the only metric. The Fable 5 release proves that as Frontier AI reaches the Mythos tier, raw intelligence is a given. That's kind of what I was saying earlier, right? LLMs already have like intelligence that goes beyond our own, and so therefore we're like the bottleneck, the limit. The real differentiators are now workflow integration, compliance gates, and the price of autonomy. Okay, so real differentiators are now workflow integration. So like how do we actually use this in our own workflows? Compliance gates, like HIPAA, for example, that could be a compliance gate. Or, yeah, blueprints, I can't take that because it's not that good at blueprints. But, like wherever there's a compliance issue, or a compliance gate, you just have to be, aware of the abilities of the model and the price of autonomy. The price of autonomy. Do you want to pay the extra money, for this model to like, run on its own pretty much for long horizon tasks, which if Minimax, I'm still testing it, but if Minimax M3 proves to be pretty good at this, then I would rather pay them for the price that they're asking than Fable 5. But again, once again, only tests will show how good it is and what it can do on its own. Yeah, there you go. That's the presentation. So yeah, with that being said, what do you think about Fable 5, Anthropic's new model, and what they basically say about how it slays the Spire, for example. But yeah, just let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel a lot. And yeah, I'll see you for the M3 CRM video that I am concocting and almost done with. Almost. All right, guys. See you in the next one.